Right. So, having just come out of the classroom and now having a conversation with the instructional coach, the things I usually like to do at the very, very beginning is I like to talk about is this a typical lesson for the teacher? Are they overperforming because we're in the room? Are they underperforming? They're just having a bad day? And I like to ask a question first because I like to just see like the coach's ability to judge like where their teacher is that specific day. It also kind of lets us know that like we're looking at a teacher within the snapshot of a moment, right? And so we're going to talk about 15 minutes of instruction that's not taking into consideration the bigger picture. And so I think it takes a little bit of like the bite away maybe of some of the feedback that might come later. Something else I like to do with teachers, and I've liked to do this in the past with instructional coaches, is just do like a quick fist to five. Like what's just our knee jerk reaction, and then we can talk about it. We can say like, was this the best use of time? Like zero, like a fist is this is a complete waste of time, and five is like this person should be teacher of the year. I think that again, it allows us to gauge just how aligned we are with something. And if I'm saying, hey, this is a one, and they're saying this is a two, be like, oh, okay, like we can talk about some pretty heavy shifts that need to happen. But if I'm saying this is a one, they're saying it's a four, then we need to take some more time working with the coach about what their instructional eye is and what they believe excellence is in a rigor in a math classroom. And so I then go into things like the things that I want them to keep doing, the positives in the classroom. I ask the coach first. I think it's important for them to always go first. And then I like to tell them the things that I saw. Me personally, I saw that I thought that there was a very authentic task. And so aligned to the instruction partner's guide, this is 2A. I thought that there was data from past Olympics, which is an authentic task. And there's minimal directions given. It's pretty clear that kids know that they should be making a scatter plot based on some of the things the teacher is saying, and so she could hide that a little bit more and just say like represent this however you want, and then there could be a different conversation around what's the best representation or what's the most appropriate. But there's an authentic task there besides just like random numbers, and so I think that gives kids a little bit more incentive and they want to do this well because it is like a real world example. Aligned to 3D, I thought there was really good peer-to-peer communication. The group work comes after 100% think time, which is incredibly important. Too often we see people just say like, all right, work together, and like the high flyer will take that group all the way through versus like everyone takes some time, everybody gets something to say to your group, and now let's go into some group work where you are listening to your peers to come up with the best answer or to come up with a plan. And so I thought that was a really, really smart move and something I definitely want the teacher to continue doing. It takes a lot of talk time away from the teacher, which is great because we want student driven classes. We want their voice to be the ones elevating the math conversation. And then finally, something else that I thought was strong here was 3C, where there's multiple representations. There's multiple right answers to this question, which is what math is all about. There's generally not one right answer or one right way to do things. And so while they were all creating a scatter plot, they could have messed up the labels. They could have put they could have like mixed up the X and Y axis, which would have been a really interesting conversation for them to have on the back end when they were doing their show calls. I think the majority of the time was spent more about scaling, but those are the things that I thought were strong about this, and I would want the teacher to keep doing those things. In terms of things that I would want them to do better, I think I always ask a question of just like, so based on the aim of the lesson or the objective of the lesson, my interpretation of the lesson was that the aim was given bivariate data. Scholars will be able to calculate and interpret the correlation coefficient to assess the strength of a linear model. Based on that, I generally ask the coach, you know, like, so what do kids have to know and do by the end of this lesson? And this is a great time to skill build with the instructional coach of like, do you know what kids need to know and do by the end of this lesson? For me, they would need to know that a correlation coefficient measures how linear a regression line is, which is a measure of confidence in the predictability of the model. What they need to be able to do is pretty involved in this lesson. They've got to input bivariate data using the stat feature on a TI-84 or whatever model they're using. They've got to put it into the list. They've got to enter the data. They need to use stat plot and linear regressions. They actually have to find R and then interpret it. there's a lot that they have to know and do. And then we ask the teacher, or we ask the instructional coach, so based on what we just saw, how confident are you that they would be able to master this objective? And this is where my claim comes for this lesson, is basically around standards alignment. My claim is that the activity of the lesson is misaligned to the standard in the objective. And so, what I would want them to do differently is I need them to have some sort of task that is authentic to things that they're already doing, but is going to align to the actual standard. And so, the standard SID 8 needs them to calculate the actual correlation coefficient. And they spent probably 20 minutes just creating a scatter plot, which is more aligned to Algebra 1 or 8th grade, and they're in 11th grade. And so what I would want to see is I would want to see two sets of data here. Already graphed with a linear regression, they could quickly make an estimation of like, what do you think the correlation coefficient is? This could bring out things like it's negative because it's got a negative slope. It's very close to -1 because it's very linear. All the points are very close to the regression line. Things like that. Something that's going to get them into the actual meat of the lesson faster. Because in the first 15 minutes of that lesson, I did not see them starting to work on the things that they need to be able to know and do by the end of the lesson. And so that would be the action step I'd want them to take after this is in coaching lessons or in coaching sessions. The first thing they do is to unpack the standard of what do kids have to be able to know by the end of this lesson? What do they have to be able to do by the end of this lesson? Now let's work backwards from that to create a lesson in which all components align to that mastery.